Hey, how's it going? Take two. All right, so I'm doing another show. Okay, let me straighten up my attitude here. This episode is going to be about War of the Worlds, and I've talked about it before. And I'm talking about the series, the latest series that was on EPIX. So there was a second one that I think it ran for maybe 2 seasons, and this is not that one. The thing about that one is that it took place in the same era that the book came out in, and it was obviously, or we're told it was based on the book, but previous to seeing that show, like several years before, I saw on YouTube a video entitled The Real War of the World. So I clicked on it, and it was this whole documentary about how there was an actual invasion that is described just like in the book, like exactly like in the book. And the thing that struck me about it was that it was covered by one of England's, if not the first, earliest newspapers called The Sun. And after I watched this video that claimed that this invasion truly happened, I searched to see if the newspaper existed, and it did, and it was still in print at the time. Like, I don't hear anything about it, so it must have like a certain slot that it lives in that gets buried, I suppose, because not maybe like our I don't know, New York Post is pretty popular, but maybe like the Inquirer used to be, where it was like, yeah, people look at it and it's there, but we don't really take it that seriously or something. I don't know. So I don't know if it's still there today, but you are welcome to search it. I satisfied my own curiosity about that. And other thing I wanted to do before I get started, now that I got that out of the way. Oh, not done with that. That other show, though, couldn't find it anywhere. Just like I can no longer find that video that was entitled The Real War of the Worlds. So, I mean, maybe look in the Wayback Machine if you're curious. I tried. For some reason, all I could find was pages of code that I knew. I don't know how to read that. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll try back in a couple of years and it'll be something that I can access. But when YouTube and other places start scrubbing a lot of information, that was one of the things that went, which is interesting because if it's not true, why take it away? Anyway, so this show that was on EPIX, I think the other one came on Stars. Before I start talking about it, I just want to talk about some things that are in it that have to do with why I call this the Spirit. What do I call it? The Spirit TV Critic channel. It's because not just that I like shows and that I like movies and I like to talk about them, but it's also that I have a certain channeler that I like to listen to. And this guy channels one entity, and it's Cryon, but Cryon is not an entity composed of a single personality. It's a collection of angelic energies, and so it speaks for all of that, and it's pretty much omnipresent and all-seeing and very wise, and it doesn't talk about necessarily our future so much as the potentials of what our future could be. So he talks about, I'm going to call it he because a man channels it and it's just natural to say that. It really, I would call it an it. But guy channeling, so he. Anyway, he talks a lot about science and like health things, issues, inventions, discoveries that we're likely to see soon. And he doesn't talk about stuff unless it's already out somewhere. Like, it may not have been widely publicized, like, as of yet, but it's out in the world, like in a lab, or scientists know about it. Like, it's not secret and it's not hidden, and eventually we'll all know about it. So one thing he's been talking about for a long time is how our consciousness is in our DNA, and it's a quantum link that allows us to do things like be thinking of someone before the phone rings and that it's that person, that kind of consciousness link. And in the show, there are some people talking about it, and they say that there's a quantum link in the cells to consciousness. And I don't know, I mean, I guess DNA is in your cell, but they did fudge it a little bit. But I mean, that's what they do on shows like this, because I'm sure just like here in Europe, there's consultants that are scientists and, you know, whatever military people need to be around to consult on the script. So that came up, and one thing that Quine always says is that there's a link between spirituality and science. So by that I think it just means that you can call it whatever you want, but it exists under whatever label you call it. So another thing that came up in the show, that this is not really a Cryon thing. He talks about black holes, but he talks about different stuff, and I'm not even going to try to relay that back to you, because I don't remember all the details, and it's pretty complex. So in the show, though, they talk about black holes emitting gravity waves, and that is a true thing. I looked it up. But it really affects the people badly. And in the show, I'm going to spoil. I have to show my disclaimers here for YouTube, but I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm just going to spoil the crap out of this. So the aliens in the show discover that if they open mini black holes, or they already knew, I guess, in the context of the show, but they start opening mini black holes because they will attach to the larger black hole that I didn't say is in the show, circling over the area where the invasion is. So in the show, the scientists discover the same thing eventually by going to particle collider and making their own black holes, and one of them gets in the beam of the particle collider, and that is a bridge to not another time, but an alternate dimension. So there is like a time travel-ish aspect in the show, which is pretty cool. And I don't know if that's a true thing. And if it were, do you think they'd tell us? I do not. So, yeah. I think I got it. All right. So, in the show, the invasion takes place in Europe and England. But I got to wondering about that, because I was like, well, wait a minute. Like, Europe and England only? That makes no sense when they just get everybody everywhere. Well, I don't know the size or capacity of the aliens invasion. They don't really talk about that. And the main reason that the focus of the story is in those two places, France and England, is because, big huge spoiler about to happen, the Adam and Eve of the aliens invading Earth are actually the progeny of two humans in the show. So the aliens are us. We are the space people. The aliens are us. After a while, not entirely, but I don't need to tell you every dang detail, do I? So, let me catch up to where I am here. Nope. We're talking about. Never mind. Wow, I was really going on about 1938. Okay, well, I guess I'll talk about what happened. Oh, 1953. Okay, well, okay. That's right, this is the second time. So I already said stuff, but I forgot I said it. So when I started doing this, I started thinking about, like, the source material, which is the book, War of the Worlds. But there was, after the book was published in 1897, which was, I believe, the end of the Victorian era. So that must have created some social... What do you call it? Oh, that's not the right analogy I want to use. I guess some social pushing and shoving, because that always happens. Like, people don't like change, people really want it, and that creates a clash in society. So that's all. I didn't look into what was going on in 1897, but I did look at what was going on the next time it appeared, and that was the radio broadcast put together by Orson Welles and Howard Koch. They co-wrote it and co-produced it, I believe. And it was out of a radio show on CBS New York. And they did such a good job writing that script that people forgot they tuned into their favorite weekly or daily radio show, and we're just transported to, like, holy cow, the aliens are coming to get us, and, like, believing it. And it was on Halloween night that they played it too, so they do stuff like that on Halloween. We know that. And those people just, like, lost it. It was crazy. I looked to see, like, if there were any casualties or anything. And the worst thing I could find was that some person tried to poison themselves, trying to get out before the aliens got them, but they were unsuccessful. And then they later blamed the broadcast, saying that it was the broadcast's fault that they went crazy. But I guess that person wasn't the only one, and I suppose there were other injuries, but I really couldn't find, like, many details. So that whole night of people going nuts and getting hurt and getting killed, that's a bunch of rumors, I guess. But it did make me wonder, like, what in the world was going on at that time? But it wasn't hard to know, because it was 1938, and I just remember from history and my own curiosity that over in Germany, they were having a really, really bad financial crash, depression, just everything bad, and it went on for, like, years, and, you know, they had trouble getting goods and services, and it just really pummeled their national identity. They didn't have that healthy, happy, robust, like, feeling that even I associate with Germans, and so that really had to, like, mess with their heads, right? And then along comes Hitler, who, I gotta say, that guy was kind of broken himself, but he knew how to fake it till he made it. And if you know his history, he didn't have that hard of a time. I think it was just kind of the guy he was, that he made life harder for himself, I think. And then if you've ever taken a look at Mein Kampf, my God, the guy is the hugest victim in the world, just blaming everybody. And so this unlikely messiah comes along and starts pumping up the national identity of the Germans. This Austrian guy, this sort of weirdo loser failure guy. And he just tells them how much smarter and better and faster and beautiful they are than everybody else, and gets them into this whole mindset of otherizing. And, well, we know where it went from there. Like, everybody that wasn't this Aryan ideal, which he wasn't. I met a lot of Germans. Many of them are not this blonde, blue-eyed Uberman guy. So the people that are like desperate, they're looking for like someone to help them get back to feeling normal, someone to like put things right so that they can go back to what they were doing. It's not like a really critical thought process, I don't think, because then they ended up following this guy down the road to hell, becoming Nazis. And it's like, I just wondered why they didn't take a look at like who they were hitching their wagon to. Like, someone that's always complaining and blaming other people and saying that stuff was done to them as if they had like nothing to do with anything. They're just there and stuff just happens. That's not the way stuff happens. You are a participant on some level. I mean, even if a car comes out of nowhere and hits you, some stranger, on some level, collectively, the world has agreed, including you, to have this happen, because this is the spiritual thing coming in. Everything that happens to us, it can be learned from. Even if it's really bad, like if you come out of it, then you can look back, you can reflect like, oh, I survived, and then one day something happens and it's like some skill comes to mind, really like just whap, you need it in a hurry, and it's there because that bad thing happened and you learned it there. I mean, that's kind of how it works. So anyway, that's what was happening in 1938. We know where it went. I don't need to continue talking about that. And then the next time the story came up was in a movie in 1953, the first movie, and that took place in California on the West Coast. That's where the landing happened in that story. And what was going on in 1953? Well, the Korean War armistice was signed between the U.S. and North Korea, which means that still to this day, I think, we are at war with them, but not actually doing hostilities. So, yay. Stalin died, Joseph Stalin, and he came to a violent end, which that seems to be a pattern with Russian leaders. For some reason, there's a lot of murdering those people. And I mean, it's looking like that's what's going to carry over even today with the current leader in Russia. What else? Queen Elizabeth was crowned and began her reign. The Russians blew off a hydrogen bomb, first one ever. And Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay summited Mount Everest for the first time. So those things were happening in 1953, but I believe that was like the Cold War was happening, and that made us super paranoid, and it was the 50s, and you can look back on it today, I suppose, if you can remember it. I wasn't born until the 60s, but you hear a lot of people today saying they want to go back to those times, but there is a filmmaker on YouTube named, I think David Freeman. I'll try and link it, but he's an elderly guy now, and he has films that he made from like the 60s and the 70s, and the people talking about the 50s don't make it sound like if it was very fun, very nice. It sounds really repressive and uptight, and well, why do you think the 60s happened? So, okay, that was 1953. And then we don't hear anything for a while about War of the Worlds. And shoot, what I do with that page. I think that after that, the next thing that happened was a movie in 2005, and that was with Tom Cruise and Dakota Fanning. And let me hold on. I need to find that paper because I wrote all of this down for this reason. Here it is. So yeah, Tom Cruise, Dakota Fanning. There's a guy named Justin Chatwin, and he was in a movie called Another Life, and I think that is a Netflix production, but it has, oh shoot, I can't remember her name. She was in Battlestar Galactica, the blonde one, she was all up in everybody's shit. Well, anyway, Another Life, he was in that. Tim Robbins is in it. David Harbour, Morgan Freeman's in it. He narrates. So, yeah. And what was happening in 2005? Well, Bush got elected to a second term. Katrina hit. Can't remember the other stuff. And again, I didn't write it down like a dork. But there's nothing wrong with your searchy finger. So, let me see. Do I have more to say about that? I'm just not well organized for this. I was. You don't know how many times I tried to do this. Okay. Okay, I don't want to talk about that. That will not go over well. Okay, here we go. Okay. So, like any decent sci-fi alien horror story, scared people and the seeking of kinship or just plain old companionship becomes all-consuming and desperate. The people want to cleave unto family if they have them around, or they freak out and go to do almost anything to get to and be with the family and save them. Cases in point, the characters of Bill Ward and Catherine Duran, the two of them, they're scientists and they make like really incredible sacrifices. Catherine goes through, she literally says she crossed space and time to be with her sister and her newborn niece and her brother-in-law, and just the people that she feels closest with. So it is crazy. She first is in that reality, and then stuff happens and she ends up in another reality that's very similar, but it's different. And she's the one that discovers the gateway, or the first one that makes it through the human's gateway across the dimensions. And the other person that makes a hell of a lot of sacrifices, and by the way, if I wanted somebody on my side, it would be Catherine Duran. Like, she literally went through heaven and hell to get back to her people. Like, that's a solid person you want on your side. But the other person is her colleague in the fact that they're scientists. They didn't actually work together. Is Bill Ward, and I believe he's a professor, not the guy from Black Sabbath, although that would be funny. His side hack, his side hustle is a scientist. But hey, the dude from Queen. And I guess, well, never mind. He was a grump, so I'm not even going to mention him. Bill Ward, though, he ends up alienating and pissing off everyone because of what he ends up doing to save the entire human race. He loses his wife. He loses his son, although, in another dimension, the son is alive, but he resents him because you don't see the mother in this dimension. So and it sounds like she's still alive, but she just won't see him. So like I said, it's the same, but different. Bill in the original dimension, has to kill one of the people that ends up being the Adam and Eve. He ends up having to kill the Eve of the because they're the alien progenitors. So he does not want them to be able to come to this. They apparently are time traveling, the aliens. So he doesn't want them to come back to his time on any dimension and breed, because they're killing all of the people they came from, basically, and that ain't right. So he has to go to jail. I mean, he really gets put through the ringer, but this series ends the story the same way the book does, in the same way all of the movies had. It's the same thing that gets the aliens in the end. So, I mean, that's comforting. You kind of know where it's going. And in the first couple of seasons, we lost a bunch of people. We lost them, like I'm all attached to it. Talk about getting transported. But people that I began to really care for got killed. I was like, no, don't kill that one. Don't kill that one. And then they moved to this other timeline, and they're still able to work both timelines, by the way. Like, some crazy theoretical science. Is it theoretical, though? But theoretical science going on in this show. But you get some of the people back that you lost, and they get to have some redemptive moments that feel just awesome. And, you know, basically, it all kind of works out like okay. Just like life, we lose some people. And it's not always the cause of something the aliens have done. A lot of times it's something that we do to ourselves that, you know, can end our existence. So it was on for 4 seasons, so there's no way I'm going to get the whole cast on there, and there's so many incidental people that have tiny roles that I just put the main people that I thought were important, that are in the story from start to finish and really hold it together. And, you know, I was a fan of this show, and then this last year, I didn't know that it was going to just end. I think it ended. I mean, it seemed like it did. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't know where else the story could go. Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say. Okay, I guess I'm done. I hate when that happens. Yeah, that's it. I can't think of anything else. It was hard. Oh, now I know what I was going to say. It was hard to finally get here and get this done. Like, I knew the season was coming. I had seen an announcement on Deadline on Twitter. Deadline's an entertainment account. I don't have words. They're something that has to do with entertainment. They talk about it. They have news. They're like a classier TMZ. So, they announced that the new season was going to start, and I thought, let me just forget about that so I can binge it. Because I have other stuff that came out too, and I cannot wait to watch it. I can't not watch it for 3 weeks. It's like I have to see it. So this one, luckily, I was able to save. And I did binge it, and then I had to sit there for like a week and digest it. And I'm not even getting out everything that I have to say about it. But I'm going to end here because I think I said enough. It is mind-bending. It's convoluted and confusing, but it ultimately unravels really, actually elegantly and satisfyingly. And Gabriel Byrne, like, I love him. He's so awesome in this. But there's a lot of people in this that are just amazing, like them. So, thumbs up. I highly recommend it. It's so good. And it gives you so much to think about. Like, what is really real, you know? But the crazy thing was that the aliens were us. Okay, that's it. Thank you, and good night. Oh, hi, I always miss. Bye.